Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. And this is our playthrough of the first place Buffalo Wings. Admittedly, a very small sample size, only 6 games into this 2028 season. But after losing on opening day, our Wings are 5-1, first place in the National League East. And we've got a big series coming up, 3 games against the second place Atlanta Braves. So that should be a good measure of what this team really is, obviously, in the very early stages of the season. Before we get started, though, we will take a quick look at something we haven't checked in on too recently, and that is what our farm system looks like. And right now we are considered 8th out of 32 in the majors. Humberto Duque, who we just signed a couple of months ago as an international amateur free agent, is viewed as the 11th best prospect in baseball. He's not going to turn 17 until September, so he will likely be at our complex this year and most likely next year before we bring him into the DSL. Ali Ostendorf, who we picked number 2 overall last season, starting pitcher, viewed as the number 21 prospect in baseball here at the start of the 2028 season. He was 3-3 with a 3.94 ERA in rookie ball for us last year. I think he'll probably start the year at rookie ball. Would love the control to at least be a notch higher before we promote him to A. But tend to think there's a good chance he'll be playing in A ball this year. And then we have, as you can see here, 4 other top 100 prospects. Duque and Ostendorf are the big 2. Rodolfo Carmona, who was an international free agent signing a little over a year ago, number 76 prospect in baseball, and he turned 18 over the winter. We have promoted him to the DSL, where he will begin play in the coming months. Santiago Marte, another international free agent signing. He from 2026. Played in rookie ball for us last year, where he was absolutely brutal. Hit a .153, and he struck out 103 times in 215 at-bats. So a strikeout rate approaching 50%. Only 19 years old. Clearly hope that he improves, but not the start that we would have hoped for Santiago Marte. Joe Edwards is a second baseman who was our second-round pick last year, viewed as the number 85 prospect in baseball. He hit just .228 with 3 homers and 127 at-bats in rookie ball. Just turned 19 a little over a month ago, likely to remain in rookie ball probably for the whole season. And then last but not least, Takao Ota, minor league free agent signing from this offseason, a Japanese import who we signed to a minor league deal with a major league option. He is obviously with us in the majors. Not off to a great start with the 4-for-21 batting average, but we do like the fact that 3 of those 4 hits are home runs. We think his home run power is interesting, and 3 home runs in his first 21 at-bats certainly seems like there's something to potentially build on there. So those are the top prospects in our system at this point. Obviously, we will check in more as the season goes along and we start seeing how people are performing on the field, and also potentially deciding who needs to be promoted up to another level. You can see Albany and Utica are AAA and AA teams, the only teams that have started playing so far. For some reason, they always keep the FCL and DSL records from the previous season. They carry over until the season starts for some reason. I'm sure someone who is listening and or watching knows the explanation for that. Just seems like a bug to me, but it is what it is. And this upcoming series with Atlanta is particularly important. As I mentioned, they're in second place, but it also is the last divisional foe that we're going to be facing until we're home against the Mets at the end of the month. We started off with Pittsburgh, Miami, and Washington, three divisional rivals. Had the second game of the year rained out at Pittsburgh, but after these three against Atlanta, going to have a lot of AL games with the Guardians, the Blue Jays, the A's, and the Twins before we get back home for that series, four-game series with the Mets to close out the month of April. So probably not going to keep playing 8:33 ball for the month of April, but our goal this year is to get this team above 500 and hopefully be in playoff contention in late September. And if we can achieve both of those things, then we'll see where the chips fall over the final week or two of the season and whether we can maybe sneak this team into the playoffs. And certainly getting off to a good start over the rest of the month of April is going to be a big help in hopefully us eventually becoming a team that is competing for the playoffs this year. In one bad piece of news, Johnny DeLuca, the outfielder, setback in his recovery from rotator cuff inflammation. He's been dealing with that for a while at this point, been out since February. He injured himself when he was, I believe he was walking a dog or playing frisbee with his dog. It doesn't give the details anymore, but I'm pretty sure he suffered that injury while playing frisbee with his dog. There we go. Yes. Rotator cuff inflammation while throwing his dog a frisbee. So that is the bad news. But the good news, if you've been looking closely, is that we swept the Braves at home. We've won the first game at home against Cleveland. So after losing on opening day, our Buffalo Wings have now won 9 in a row, which is by far the best streak ever in the history of this franchise. And of course, as soon as I mention that streak, it comes to an end. We lost the last two games in the series against Cleveland. You can see Deshaun Safo had stolen 30 consecutive bases as well, which was dating back to last season, obviously. But taking a look at Mr. Safo's season for us thus far, batting average is .264. And after leading the league with 15 triples last year in 88 games, no triples thus far this year through his first 13 games. But he is 16 of 17 on the base paths, and he has started to walk a little bit, which is good to see. Our scout actually thinks his potential in contact is back up to 80. For a while that was 75, but if he can get another 5 points in contact and gap power and maybe in avoiding Ks, as I've said before, I think he's going to be a very interesting and dynamic offensive force for us, hopefully for many years to come. We recently signed him to a big extension to lock him up through his early 30s, through all of his minimum salary years, his arbitration eligible years, and the first few years of potential free agency. So we are planning on building this thing around Seifu. I think he could definitely steal triple-digit bases this year, and I think he's really a throwback in that profile to some of the players that we saw back in the 1980s. I think Willie Wilson is probably a pretty good analogous player for Seifu. I think Seifu potentially has even more speed and more potential success on the base path than Willie Wilson did. The hope, looking at the career that he's gotten off to, is that he's the second coming of Ricky Henderson in terms of base stealing. Unfortunately, he's never going to have the ability to draw walks that Ricky Henderson had back in the day. But I think in terms of just slamming doubles and triples all over the field, Willie Wilson could be a pretty interesting proxy for what Deshaun Seifu becomes. And I want to say, I'll have to look this one up. I think of players that I've actually watched play, so basically players who kind of were in the majors from the late 70s until now, I want to say I think Willie Wilson has the most triples of any player that's really played while I've been alive. But I will check on that to make sure I'm not spreading bad information. And I was going to just pull up my iPad and go to Baseball Reference or Wikipedia or somewhere to find who's got the most triples of my lifetime. And then I realized that I could just do it right here. Uh, Obviously, with 15 triples in his rookie season, if he does that for 20 years, Seifu could be the all-time leader in triples. I think that could be very ambitious, but you can see a lot of players in the late 19th and early 20th century among the all-time leaders in triples. Stan the Man Musial, 177. He's the first guy who played past the 1950s to be on the list, which is kind of crazy. Oh, Roberto, I was alive slightly for Roberto Clemente, but certainly do not remember him playing, so that does not count. A lot of guys from the early 1900s here. Oh, there we go. Willie Wilson. So Willie Wilson, 1976 to 1994. So I knew what baseball was when he first came up, but certainly can't claim that I was following the Kansas City Royals of the mid 70s as a young child in New York. But Willie Wilson with 147 triples is the tied for 54th overall, and really during my lifetime he's hit more triples than anybody who's ever played the game. So I think that might be a interesting target for Seifu to go after the next several years, hopefully the next decade and a half with the Buffalo Wings. See if he can get Willie Wilson's 147 triples over the course of his career. Taken again, not that we're going to obsess about Seifu, but we'll take a quick look at his career batting stats at this point. His 162 game average would be for 24 triples. Obviously, that's based on the monster number he had in 88 games last year in his rookie season. Probably not going to be on pace for 26, 27 triples a season. That seems a little extreme, but even 24 probably extreme. But he does seem like a guy who hopefully is going to be hitting 15 to 20 triples a year, and it is a exciting play that is not as frequent as it was 100, 120 years ago. And another good week in the books for the Wings after we lost those 2 in a row, won 4 in a row against the Blue Jays and the A's, and then we split the final 2 in the series with the A's. So 14 and 4 start, 777 winning percentage for our Wings as we head towards the end of April. We are 3 games up on the Mets in the National League East at this point. Marcelo Meyer, the shortstop we added this offseason, hitting .338 with a league best 22 ribbies. Deshaun Seifu, not surprisingly, leading the league with 17 steals. Eric Pena, who we had sent down when the season started, and then when there was an outfield injury, we brought him up. And we felt bad about sending him down because of the really nice year he had for us at the major league level last year, 272 with 21 homers. And he's doing even better this year, leading the league in OPS. Deshaun Seifu leading the league in batter WAR at this point. Meyer has had a 14-game hitting streak that is still active. Taking a look at the pitching, don't see a lot of pitchers among the top 3 in the league right now, but obviously it can't be too bad with a 14-4 record at this point. Seifu just won the Player of the Week. Yeah, that's a pretty good week. 16 for 27, 593 average with a homer and 4 ribbies. So Seifu playing well. And our Buffalo Wings are viewed as the best team in baseball according to the power rankings. So things are going pretty well so far in this 2028 season. And with the team playing some incredible baseball, selling out almost every game, we are going to boost our ticket prices just a little bit to $33. Would think that we're probably still going to keep selling out, but want to generate as much revenue as possible because while we've got a lot of money to bring on contracts this year, if we think we're going to be a contender, obviously want as much flexibility next off season to potentially add in some players who can help us. The goal was just to get over 500 and be in the playoff race, but we'll see what we look like at the end of the month of April. Still got a week of action to go, but with that 14-4 start, certainly have aspirations of perhaps being a playoff team in our third season in Major League Baseball. And the month of April finished up pretty good. We swept the Twins in Minnesota. We did only split with the Mets in the 4-game series at home when we finally got back to facing an NL East rival. But still, if you had told me a month ago that at the end of April we'd be 19-6 with a 3.5 game lead in the division and the best record in baseball, certainly would have accepted that. So the Wings, everything is going well thus far, better than well. It's been a great start to the season. And taking a look at the league leaders, Seifu still easily leading the league with 21 steals, tied for the league lead in batter war. Marcelo Meyer with an 18-game hitting streak. And Hayden Yinger, who we made the trade for this offseason, all he's done is go 3-0 with a 1.40 ERA. Kind of brought him on board with a similar model to what we did with Shane Bieber last year, thinking he could be a pretty effective 5-inning starter for us. All Bieber did last year was lead the league in ERA. Yinger not as good this year. He's second in ERA, but if that ERA even goes up by a 1.5 over the course of the rest of the season, it will be a very good addition for us. Taking a look at our team statistics, and obviously with a 19-6 record, it's been a magical start, better than our Pythagorean record by 2 games. 13-5 at home, 6-1 on the road. So the schedule has definitely favored us with all of those home games that we've had so far. Wouldn't be surprised as those numbers equalize if that has a bit of a negative impact on our record, even though thus far we've been even better on the road than we were at home or have been at home. You can see we're generally in the top half of the league and just about, actually the top third of the league in most offensive categories. 12th in walks and 11th in strikeouts, second in steals, obviously driven by Deshaun Seifu. Base running really good. And the pitching, we're kind of top 3 in just about every pitching category. We actually are top 3 in every pitching category except for walks, where we're tied for last in the National League. So kind of a weird dynamic there where we're top 3 in everything except for walks. And our defensive efficiency and our zone rating are a lot better than a season ago. Hopefully having Marcelo Meyer at shortstop and allowing some of the other guys like Made and Seifu to hopefully play defensive positions that they're a little more capable of has worked out. But obviously a lot of baseball ahead of us and still a very small sample size of less than 1/6 of the season in the books, but we're not going to complain about the way the team's performing so far. Taking a look at our schedule for the upcoming month of May, going to start off with 3 at home against the Expos and then finish off with 3 against the Dodgers before a road trip to Colorado and San Francisco, home against the Phillies, and then a very long road trip against the Nationals, the Marlins, the Brewers, and then the Yankees. So if we're able to play above 500 ball this upcoming month with a a lot more games on the road, including a road trip of exactly, well, not exactly, but about 2 weeks. And we'll see. I'm assuming we'll be back home. We'll probably have an off day at the end of the road trip and then start a 3-game series at home the first weekend in June, I'm guessing. Yep, exactly. We'll have the Red Sox at home in June. So hopefully we can have another above 500 month. Certainly not expecting that we're going to keep playing 760 ball, but certainly would hope that this team can prove that what happened in the month of April is not an aberration and put together a winning month here in May. And we'll take a quick look at how our pitching staff has done through the first month of the season. Ohtani and Painter both 3-1, mid-3 ERA for Ohtani, mid-4 ERA for Painter. Bieber, after leading the league in ERA, 2-0 with a 2.08 ERA. Yinger, as we've talked about, 3-0 with a 1.40 ERA. So the 5-inning pitchers who we have as our third and fourth starters doing exceptionally. Brandon Williamson, last year's number 5 starter, has been a disappointment. Obviously a small sample size, just 14 innings pitched through 4 games, but that 7.07 ERA, not impressive, certainly allowing 14 hits, including 3 home runs, and walking 9, leads to a 164 whip. And we are actually going to do something that will surprise some of you, and some of you have mentioned in the comments that I should probably have a shorter leash and less patience than I oftentimes do with underperforming players. But we are actually going to move Williamson out of the rotation now. We are going to make room for him by sending down Humberto Rosado, 29-year-old who still has options left. He's pitched his way to an almost 5 ERA this year. The only other reliever who's really struggled is the lefty Harold Melenge, who we picked up as a Rule 5 draftee from Texas. He has not been good, but he's only pitched in 5 games. Pretty good control with 1 walk and 10 strikeouts over 10 2/3 innings. He's given up a lot of hits, but he's got a 382 BABIP. Hopefully that will normalize a bit. So we are going to send Rosado down to AAA Albany, and we are going to bring up Ji-Hoo Kim. You may remember him. We signed him to a minor league contract with major league options. He does have the opportunity to opt out if we don't promote him by day 30 of the season. So obviously we're getting dangerously close to that date. He's 3-1 with a 3.38 ERA in AAA. Certainly his pitching profile suggests that he could be a pretty decent number 5 pitcher at the major league level. So we are going to give him the first crack at hopefully stabilizing our number 5 starter position with Kim. Gives us all righties in the rotation. And actually, I'm not going to let Martinez pick the bullpen because you may remember from our previous episode, I did put Atencio and Talavera into stopper roles where they've both been pretty effective. Talavera's been brilliant with a 0.39 ERA over 23 innings. I guess the only issue with our team is that we've been so dominant. Our closer, Devin Williams, has only pitched in 5 games, only has 2 saves, been winning a lot of games by blowout. But other than that, not really too much to complain about in terms of how this team has performed. And taking a quick look at the stats of our offensive players, somewhat gratifying. The 2 guys, Deshaun Seifu and Marcelo Meyer, that we signed to long-term extensions right before the season started, both have 1.5 or higher WARs through the first month of the season. Seifu hitting 343 with, as we've talked about, the league best 21 steals. Meyer hitting 346 with team best 26 runs driven in and team best 24 runs scored. So we are getting real good offense out of our second baseman and shortstop. Take a look defensively at what Seifu has done, and he's been fine defensively, not brilliant, but he's handled the position competently, pretty close to major league average kind of levels. Marcelo Meyer at short, Similar. More than competent. Neither of these guys is going to win a gold glove, but they certainly have given us solid, stable defense at those two important defensive positions. And the month's off to a decent start, 3-2 record. We took 2 out of 3 at home against Montreal. We've split the first 2 against the Dodgers, but some injury news and the recent promotion, unfortunately for us. And I'm clicking on league news, which I never tend to click on, so it's taking a while to pull that up rather than the team news that I happened to just look at. But now we are back to my personal news, and I guess there wasn't an email about it. There must have been an email about it. Regardless, I don't have to show it to you with the email. I can go here and show you here that Ji-Hoo Kim has got a acromyoclavicular joint irritation, going to be out for 1 to 2 weeks. Only played 1 game for us. 3 hits, 1 walk, and 5 strikeouts over 4 2/3. Obviously a really small sample size. Lost the game, but doesn't seem like he was completely overmatched at the major league level, and then presumably he got pulled after 79 pitches because of the acromyoclavicular joint irritation. So he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, so we are going to need a new number 5 starter. We will put him on the IL. Hopefully he'll be back late in the month, and we'll get to make another call down to AAA to round out the roster, and hopefully we'll also figure out who's going to be our number 5 starter. And we're going to bring Sean Sullivan up from AAA. Former pretty important prospect in our system, was 11-11 as a rookie with a 3.66 ERA. He was brutal last season, 7-15, 5.85. He's 3-2 with a 4.02 ERA in AAA this year, so he hasn't been excellent. But he is kind of one of the better stamina pitchers we have. Would give us another lefty in the rotation. Those of you may know that in the past, when I've had a roster with high stamina pitchers, I've tended to try to go with a 12-man rotation. Clearly, looking at the pretty low stamina of a lot of our pitchers here, I don't think that's a practical option, so did want to bring up the 13th pitcher. I don't know that Sullivan's the long-term solution. He certainly could be headed right back down to the minors once Kim is healthy, but we'll at least give him a chance to hopefully start 3, maybe 4 games over the next couple of weeks while Kim is getting better, and make a decision towards the end of the month. And unfortunately, we've got another injury to our pitching staff, and this one potentially more impactful than a number 5 starter who's made 1 start for us in the case of Kim. Emerson Talavera, who we've put into the stopper role, or one of our stopper roles, and who has been positively brilliant. 16 games pitched, 2-0 with a save and 5 holds. Less than a batter per inning allowed, 0.34 ERA, 0.95 WHIP. He's certainly gotten a bit lucky with a 2.47 BABIP and a 3.64 SIERA, but has been very effective for us, and he's going to be out for probably about a month and a half with a strained hammy. So Talavera will be joining Kim on the injured list, and we will be headed down to AAA again. And we decided we're going to bring Misael Tamarez back. He's a guy who's been with us the first 2 seasons. He was actually a starter for us the first year of Buffalo, reliever last year. Just got caught in a numbers game this year with the improvements that we made to the pitching staff. Did well in AAA for us with 22 strikeouts over 15 2/3 innings pitched, 10 saves as our closer down there, and give him another chance to see if he can contribute at the major league level. And the month of May going very well for the Wings so far. Won every series we played. Took 2 out of 3 against Montreal, 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, 2 out of 3 in Colorado, and most recently 2 out of 3 in San Francisco. Back home for 3 against the Phillies, and then we've got that long road trip over the second half of the month coming up. We're getting to the point where we've got to make some decisions. Johnny DeLuca has been on a rehab assignment down in AAA, has not hit well at all down there. And Jace Barofin, another outfielder, just starting a rehab assignment. He only played in the first game of the year when he got hit by a pitch and I believe broke his hand, broke his wrist. What was the injury? Fractured thumb. Knew it was something that was not good. But he's coming back from that, so he'll probably spend a couple of days down in AAA. Probably about the time that we have to make a decision on DeLuca is when hopefully Barofin will have maybe close to 10 at-bats by then over a couple of games. And we're going to have to make some interesting decisions on our roster at that point. And before we get to that decision, just did want to point out, I mentioned a couple weeks ago that we had raised our ticket prices $1 to $33. Kind of looks like that was the breaking point for some people because we were selling out pretty consistently. And ever since we raised the ticket prices, we have been not quite selling out. Still on pace to have revenue per game up almost 18% this year, so I don't think there's any need to drop them. Particularly with the great play that we've had on the field so far. Take a look at the standings, and we are only up a game and a half on the Pirates at this point, who have won 5 in a row. But you can see that the Mets are 5 back, and then we've got almost a 10-game or higher lead on everybody else in the division at this point. So season still going really well. Seifu has more than the second and third guys in the entire league in steals right now, and also has more steals than the top 3 guys in the American League with his 32, still leading the league in batter war. Doesn't look like we've got any leaders among the pitchers at this point, but our guy Seifu is proven to be pretty good. 10 doubles, 2 triples, 3 homers this year. Only driven in 9 runs, but he's scored 30 runs in 37 games. Has the 32 stolen bases that we talked about. Hitting .335 with an .847 OPS, 130 OPS plus, 131 WRC plus, and a 2.4 WAR. So cannot ask or hope for much more than what Deshaun Seifu has been delivering to us through this first closing in on 1 quarter of this 2028 season. And we finally made it to decision time as far as Johnny DeLuca. He's had that 20 games in AAA in the rehab assignment. 30-10 record for Buffalo, so we're at least making this position or this decision from a position of strength. There's definitely an argument to move on from Joey Bart, and I think Patrick DeBonis most recently made this point in comments to our last episode that Bart is a worse version of our starting catcher Sean Murphy, which he certainly is defensively and offensively. But when I look at our other potential backup catcher, Samuel Basallo, his catcher ability is only a 40. And at this point, 40 games into the season, when I take a look at our pitching staff, we've got a 2.94 staff ERA, which is the best in the league. Our pitching has been brilliant. Obviously, a lot of that is driven by pitching, but some of it is driven by catching. And Basallo has actually not played anywhere defensively. He's been a pure DH and pinch hitter for us, hasn't even played first base. He's holding his own offensively, hitting .258 with 7 homers and 132 at-bats. So the power that we thought would be there is there. But our pitching has been so brilliant so far that even though Bart isn't hitting, he's a much better defensive catcher than Basallo. So we're going to keep them both around. And we are actually going to demote Miguel Blaise, who was our starting center fielder last year after being a Rule 5 pick. This year he's gotten into a platoon where he's only playing center against left-handed pitching, and he's only hitting 227 on the year. His WAR is basically replacement level for the season. And Vance Honeycutt continues to hit well, and he hasn't been a disaster defensively in center field. Zone rating and his defensive efficiency are both slightly below average for the position. His arm also is the weakest part of his defensive profile, but he's been okay out there, hitting well, not as well as he did last year, but still a productive offensive player. But we're willing to send Blaise down. Hopefully he can get more consistent playing time as our center fielder in AAA and hopefully get his bat straightened out. So we're going to send him to AAA Albany. But we are actually not going to bring up DeLuca. We're going to bring up Jace Barofin, and we're just going to keep DeLuca in AAA, finish up the rehab assignment, and he's still a guy who has 2 option years. So we are going to promote him to Buffalo, and then we're just going to send him right down to AAA Albany. We will bring Barofin up to fill that last roster spot. He didn't do much in his limited time in AAA, just 1 for 12 in 3 games. Did have a solo home run as his one hit. Hopefully got enough action there to shake the rust off. We've definitely got some depth, particularly in our outfield position in the minors at this point. Bo Bichette is probably a guy whose roster spot is in a bit of jeopardy. He's pretty much only playing against left-handed pitching, and with Barofin on the team now, it's conceivable that the playing time for the likes of Bo Bichette and Nolan Jones is going to be even less than it has been. And we got some bad news. The Rule 5 acquisition, Harold Melenge out for 4 to 5 months with shoulder inflammation. So his season is probably over. Had been pretty good for us. 3.26 ERA and 25 strikeouts over 19 and a third innings pitched. So he'll certainly be in the mix to make our team again next season. And who knows if he heals up a little quickly and we make the playoffs. And at 31-12, certainly would hope that we're going to be in the playoffs when all is said and done. Maybe he'll still be able to help us again towards the very end of this season in October. But right now, Melenge is obviously going on to the IL. But as fate would have it, it also happens to be the day that Ji-Hoo Kim is ready to come off of the IL. So he'll go right onto our 26-man roster. Wasn't gone that long, so I don't think he'll need a rehab assignment. Sullivan was really good in the one game he's pitched for us. So we're going to put Kim into the bullpen for now. But clearly he could get another opportunity as a starter if Sullivan ends up regressing towards the way he pitched a year ago for us. And we've made it to the month of June. The torrid pace we had in the month of April has slowed down a bit, but still a productive month for the Wings. We swept the Phillies. We did finally lose a series to Washington, split in Miami, took 2 out of 3 at Milwaukee, and then we took 2 out of 3 at the Yankees. Finally have an off day today, and then we'll begin that series against Boston. But taking a look at our team statistics, and we followed up the 19-6 April with an 18-10 May, so still playing really well. Still 2 games ahead of Pythagorean expectations. Home record is now better than the road record, but they're both excellent. We are 9-3 in one-run games, so definitely have been very lucky. 11-1 against left-handed starters, so absolutely destroying left-handed pitchers. Taking a look at the offense, we're tied for seventh in the National League in runs scored, so middle of the pack in terms of the most important offensive statistic. Other than that, though, we're generally in the top half of the league, still second in the league in steals, obviously driven by Deshaun Seifu. And the pitching staff has been fantastic. You can see first or second in every category except for walks, where we're fifth, and strikeouts, where we're third. And the defense for our Wings, really good, fourth in defensive efficiency and first in the league in zone rating. So great pitching, excellent defense, and acceptable batting has added up to a 37-16 record through the first 2 months of the season, and a 3.5 game lead over the Pirates, and we are 4 clear of the Mets. Our 37-16 record, still the best in baseball, but only 2 games ahead of the Reds for that mark, who are also having an excellent season. Taking a look at the league leaders, Seifu with 42 steals, not surprising to see him at the top of the leaderboard. He's slipped down to third in the league in batter WAR. Hayden Yinger, 196 ERA for us, second in the league, and tied for second with 7 wins. So still have some important players on the leaderboard. Take a quick look at our pet project, former number 1 overall pick, Deshaun Seifu, batting average down to 317, and does only have 3 triples this year after having 15 last year. But with 42 steals through our first 52 games, my thought that he could be on his way for a 100 steal season is absolutely still in the mix. OPS plus 120, WRC plus 121, almost a 3 WAR, and his OPS is over 800. So although he's a not your traditional big home run and great eye batting profile that I'd love to build around in OOTP, I think this is going to be a real fun and interesting guy to build around, hopefully for the next 10 or 12 seasons, maybe even longer than that, as hopefully the premier leadoff hitter in all of baseball for many seasons to come. And our Wings got the month of June off to a good start. Took 2 out of 3 when we were finally back home against the Red Sox. 3 more at home against the division rival Pirates before we're going on the road for division tilts against the Braves, the Mets, and the Phillies. So big opportunity over the next 2 weeks with a lot of games against our divisional rivals. Particularly those games against the Pirates and the Mets, who were up 3.5 and 4 on, can definitely make a big step towards hopefully not just putting ourselves in position for a playoff spot, but hopefully make a big step towards maybe being able to be the NL East champions this year and earning a first-round bye. I know that's a lot to be talking about for a team that won 72 games last year and is only in its 3rd year of existence, but it's been a great run so far. It is kind of disappointing that despite the brilliant 39-17 record we have, we've actually lost a little bit of fan interest over the season, and our attendance, I don't want to say it's sliding, but revenue per game is trending slightly negative, which seems bit surprising for a team that's having the great success on the field that the Wings have had thus far this year. And another good week for the Wings. Took 2 out of 3 home against Pittsburgh and then 2 out of 3 at Atlanta. Dropped the 3rd game in each series when we were looking for the sweep. But still, we've won our first 3 series of the month of June. We continue to win more than 2/3 of our games over the course of the year. Hopefully we can finish off this road trip well against the Mets and the Phillies. Unfortunately, the Mets had our number a little bit. They took 2 out of 3 against us when we were visiting in City. We have won the first game against the Phillies. Standings now, though, we've opened up a little space on the Pirates, but with the Mets taking 2 out of 3 against us, we're only up a game and a half on them at this point. 45 and 21, still have the best record in baseball, although the Reds and the Angels are both lurking not too far behind our Buffalo Wings at this point. Emerson Talavera, who suffered that injury where he was going to be out for 5 to 6 weeks, he is back, or potentially back. We're probably going to try to give him a little bit of action in AAA on a rehab assignment, probably just over the course of this weekend, but maybe give him a relief appearance or two down there. Certainly we'll be getting him back onto the major league roster as soon as we possibly can. And it's going to be decision time with the pitching staff. We want to get Talavera back up here. Ohtani, 6-4, 3.70 ERA. Painter, 5-2, 4.06 ERA. Both of those guys have been solid. Bieber is 7-2 with a 3 ERA, and Yinger 8-0 with a 1.90 ERA. And Sean Sullivan, since we brought him up, only a 2-3 record, but a 3.66 ERA over 32 innings. When the highest ERA on your pitching staff is 4.06 among your 5 starters in this day and age. You've got a pretty good pitching rotation, and certainly feel good about what our pitching has done. The bullpen has also been real good. Putting Javier Atencio, last year's closer, into a stopper role has definitely paid off. He's pitched 50 innings for us and been pretty productive over those 50 innings. Struck out 57, 3.24 ERA, 3.41 Sierra. His WAR is actually a little bit below replacement level, which is a bit surprising to me. The 24 walks probably isn't helping him, but he also has allowed a fair amount of inherited runners to score, which isn't really what I would have expected to see. His FIP minus is the rather sickly figure that he's put up for us. But I think we've still gotten 50 pretty solid innings out of him. Devin Williams has been really good as the closer. Kim, since we moved him into the bullpen role, has been fine, hasn't pitched a ton. Morjan, the left-handed addition this past offseason as a free agent, has done well. Bryce Miller has done well. Brandon Williamson, we moved him out of the starting rotation early in the season, has not been great. We may look to try to trade Williamson. He doesn't have any options left. Right now, not really impressed with the trade offers that we're getting. Still have almost a month and a half till the trade deadline, though, and his future with the organization could be in jeopardy. We're actually going to send Misael Tamaez back. He's been fine. He's been good since he came up. Just kind of caught in a numbers game right now, so we're going to send him down to AAA, and that will allow us to bring, as I said, Talavera back. Pitched a perfect inning with a strikeout in his one performance in AAA. As we had talked about, he was really excelling in a stopper role for us. We're going to put him back into a stopper role also, give us 2 stoppers in the pen. Hopefully Talavera and Atencio will continue to get a lot of the action for us out of the bullpen. And we've got the draft coming up in just a couple of days. And the Wings are kind of in the midst of their first somewhat rough patch of the season. We did win the final game against the Mets, but then we only went 2-2 against the Phillies, and we lost against the Angels. So you look at our last 9 games, and we're 3-6 over our last 9. So kind of the first struggle that we've had all year, and we're actually not in first place anymore for the first time since the early days of the season. Half a game behind the Mets now. Now, in our goal to not just have a winning record this year, but also hopefully get into the playoffs, we are 10.5 up for a wild card spot. So feeling like we're in really good shape as far as that's concerned. But with a team that's had the best record in baseball since about 4 or 5 days into the season, certainly a little disappointing that with the Mets surging and us struggling a bit, we've dropped out of first place. But we will have some time to think about what we need to do going forward as we get closer to the trade deadline. And right now, we're going to think about what we need to do to hopefully improve our team for the future. We're going to take a look at some of the top prospects before we finish off the episode. You may remember that we moved to fifth from, I believe, seventh in the lottery during the winter meetings last year. So a third straight year with a top 5 pick for our Buffalo Wings. We had the first pick back in 2026 when, of course, we brought on Seifu. We'll check in him again. Batting average 303, but getting dangerously close to being below 300. His OPS plus and his WRC plus both trending towards more average recently. But he's still 51 out of 57 on the base path, scored 45 runs through the first 69 games. So still been very productive, but not as productive as he was earlier in the year. Collecting walks still is not his strength, just 17 and 290 at-bats this year. Was better last year when he had 32 and 278 at-bats. Looks like his eye kind of is what it is at this point, not expecting a lot of improvement there. But Seifu's still having a good year. And then the guy that we took second last season, Ali Ostendorf, just getting the year started in Buffalo, 2-0 record. We are in our FCL team for Buffalo. He's down in Florida, obviously, but a 2.92 ERA over 12 and a third innings. The issue with him is just his control has been brutal. Walked 40 and 48 games last year, or 48 innings last year, and he's walked 15 in just 12 and a third innings this year. Not giving up a lot of hits, but getting a little worried that he needs to start improving that control. So certainly not at a fearful spot with him yet, but would certainly love to see a little bit of improvement in his control and a lot fewer batters taking bases on balls than have over the first season plus of his professional career. So with the 5th pick in this upcoming draft, there's a lot of different permutations, a lot of different ways that this draft can go. I'm going to highlight a few of the top prospects here. If you've got thoughts on what direction we should go in our next episode, would certainly love to hear them. Looks like it's a much deeper draft for position players than pitchers. And pitchers, definitely the top prospects are more college-aged, which isn't necessarily the worst thing for us. Starting pitcher Chris Lenig. Only issue with him, kind of interesting after what we've been experiencing with Ali Ostendorf, is his potential control, but his stuff and his movement are pretty close to major league level. He's already got a better than a major league fastball and splitter, potential 4 or 5 pitch arsenal, ground ball pitcher that throws in triple digits coming out of Arizona State. Certainly looks like he could be a guy who could be in the mix at number 5 if he's around. Isidro Ochoa, 18-year-old out of Puerto Rico, already throwing in the low to mid 90s. Another guy with strong ground ball tendencies, really good stamina. Looks like a 3-pitch arsenal, maybe a 4th pitch if he develops that changeup. But really good stuff, movement and control. Certainly an interesting prospect there as well. Juan Estrada, another pitcher out of CCBC Dundalk. Don't know where that is. Oh, Baltimore, Maryland. There you go. Community College of Baltimore County, I'm guessing. Like the work ethic and intelligence. Acceptable stamina, really good at holding runners. Another guy with 3 close to major league pitches. Maybe he'll develop a changeup. Also looks like he could potentially be a bit of a hitter. Doesn't have any power, but his contact, his gap power, his eye, and even his avoid strikeouts all could be above average to well above average. And he's got a little bit of running speed as well. So versatile prospect there who could go in a lot of different directions. The last 4-star or higher potential guy we'll talk about now, Dusty Miller out of Morristown, New Jersey, going to Stanford. Uh, High work ethic guy who is a three-pitch pitcher. Doesn't look like that changeup is a guy who's almost 22. Probably don't put a lot of stake in that developing, but has a close to major league slider and curve, and his sinker is already certainly major league quality. Stuff looks average. Movement and control could both be well above average. So I like all four of these pitchers. We'll have to see how the draft develops, and obviously I'm going to spend some more time digging in on all of them and then digging in on the rest of the prospects in this draft offline. And if you've got thoughts on how you would rank the pitchers, would certainly love to hear those in the comments. As I mentioned, the pool of position players is much deeper. I think I'm only going to talk about the 4.5-star and above players here to just kind of show you some of the top guys. And then if you notice somebody else that looks interesting, one guy who I'm sure people will mention is the 1.5-star Damian Bergman, catcher. With that great defensive catcher ability and above average arm, certainly interesting to think about. The bat potentially has a little bit of home run power, but it's certainly all about the glove with him. Seems like fifth overall, maybe a little bit aggressive, but I'll spend more time thinking about him. But taking a look at the top potential hitting prospects, at least according to our scout, and we're very high scouting accuracy on just about all of these prospects at this point. Shamar Badio, third baseman out of Cornerstone University. Low leadership, low work ethic. The bat does not look exceptional to me. The glove is fine for a third baseman. Does not look like a number 5 overall pick to me, though, even though he's a college player who's closer to being ready. I would be surprised if he's the pick for us. Jonathan Beller, left fielder, like the high work ethic, like the durability, like the potential exceptional home run power with decent contact and potentially really good gap power, left-handed bat, not much of a fielder. He could be in the mix at number 5. I'd hope when we go through these guys we can come up with someone we like more than him who may still be around at 5. We'll find out. Chase Bonaparte, first baseman, like the work ethic, like the durability, coming out of Villanova, 21 years old. Looks like a potentially pretty interesting hitting prospect. Doesn't bring much as far as the base paths, as far as bunting, even as far as his infield defense. Another first baseman, Danny Havens, 20-year-old out of Nebraska. Also looks like a pretty interesting hitter with potentially exceptional contact, really good home run power, and a potentially excellent eye. So he's a pretty interesting hitting prospect. Another guy who doesn't bring much in terms of speed and fielding. He is 6'4", so probably can play a decent first base. Catcher Alan Higgins, 5-star prospect. Certainly like the potential contact and home run power. Don't love the brutal catcher ability and catcher arm. No way I would play a guy like him at catcher. Looks like he does have versatility to play some other positions. I think he's kind of more a natural first baseman. Guy that you could play at third base in a pinch if you needed to. Could play in left field if you needed to. Certainly an interesting hitting prospect. Chaz May, left fielder. Probably the most well-rounded batting profile that we've seen so far. Also a guy with some speed. He's a corner outfielder. Could also play first base, it looks like. But certainly one of the more interesting potential bats if he completely develops. High school player, only 18 years old. It seems like there's been a fair amount of college players among the top prospects. Kadir Notice, a center fielder. Competent defensively, good bunter, okay-ish speed, decent stealer and base runner, but not exceptional. Good contact hitter, not going to strike out, not going to walk a ton. Aiden Paulton, a first baseman committed to Bethel University, the product of Maine. Another first baseman, doesn't have much speed, doesn't bring much in terms of his defense, but certainly looks like he could be a pretty interesting bat with that contact home run power and eye combination if he develops. Andy Ricard, a left fielder. Don't love the low work ethic, low leadership, kind of mad defensively. Looks like an interesting bat. Hard for me to imagine this will be a guy with that personality that will go for it number 5, but he's honestly one of the more developed players we've seen, and certainly looks like he could have an interesting bat if he fully develops. Question with that work ethic is whether or not that'll happen. Edgar Valadez, a first baseman, like that he's durable, looks like a potentially pretty interesting bat. Would feel better if he had a little more speed, given that he does have good gap power. Doesn't bring much to the table defensively. A lot of kind of natural first baseman, left fielder, DHs in the draft this year. Edgar Valadez, we just talked about him. Correct? Yes, I'm getting confused about who I'm talking to. Dave Zapp, a center fielder. It's kind of an interesting prospect. Like the bat, got a little bit of speed, got 60 outfield range. He could be an interesting pick at the 5th overall, committed to the University of Maine. See what happens, whether he's still around. And then Mike Goodwin, a second baseman. This guy's an interesting prospect. He's durable. He doesn't have Deshaun Seifu's speed, but he's not far off in terms of his speed and his stealing and his base running skills. High leadership. Don't know really where you play him defensively with those poor error and arm ratings. I mean, he's listed as a second baseman. I guess that's probably where you play him. Could also play left field for you, but not a ton of options. Could play first, but the contact, the gap power, the eye, and the avoid Ks are all really interesting. The only thing he doesn't have is home run power. So it looks like kind of a poor man's Deshaun Seifu, who's not quite as good defensively, not quite as good on the base paths. But if he fully develops, offensively, you could argue that he might be a little better if he fully develops, given that he's got the potential to draw a lot of walks. He's durable like Seifu. 18-year-old, who knows what he's going to become, but I would think he could be in the mix for us to consider at number 5 if he's available then. So obviously I'll spend a lot more time on this between now and the next episode. And if you've got thoughts on players that we've peeked in on over the last 10 minutes or so that you think may be interesting for us to potentially go after if they're available, or guys that you think we should avoid at all costs, always very helpful for me to hear what you're thinking. So would love to hear those thoughts. And with that, we are going to call it an episode. Our Wings are 46-24, half a game behind. We've got a game against the Angels later on today. But more importantly, we've got the first-year draft coming up. And any thoughts you have on which directions we should consider going or not going with that number 5 overall pick are sincerely appreciated. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.